everyone's priority, because history will judge us by our actions. It is a test of our humanity and sincerity. Thank you very much. الكلمة الآن لأخوي فخامة الأخ عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس جمهورية مصر العربية.
شكرا جلالة الملك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أخي جلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني بن حسين ملك المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، معالي السيد أنطونيو غوتيريش سكرتير عام الأمم المتحدة، أصحاب الجلالة والفخامة والسمو، السيدات والسادة، أتوجه بداية بالشكر للمملكة الأردنية الشقيقة على استضافة هذا المؤتمر المهم، وأعرب عن التقدير لجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني ومعالي سكرتير عام الأمم المتحدة لجهودهما نحو إنهاء الحرب على غزة ومحاولة تخفيف الأعباء الإنسانية الفادحة الناجمة عنها. كما أتوجه بالشكر إلى جميع الدول التي استجابت للدعوة لحضور هذا المؤتمر المشترك الذي تشرف مصر بالرئاسة المشتركة له. السادة الحضور، إن أبناء الشعب الفلسطيني الأبرياء في غزة المحاطين بالقتل والتجويع والترويع والواقعين تحت حصار معنوي ومادي مخجل للضمير الإنساني العالمي ينظرون إلينا بعين الحزن والرجاء، متطلعين إلى أن يقدم اجتماعنا هذا لهم أملاً في غد مختلف يعيد لهم كرامتهم الإنسانية المهدرة وحقهم المشروع في العيش بسلام، ويسترجع لهم بعد الثقة في القانون الدولي وفي عدالة ومصداقية ما يسمى بالنظام الدولي القائم على القواعد. إن مسؤولية ما يعيشه قطاع غزة من أزمة إنسانية غير مسبوقة تقع مباشرة على الجانب الإسرائيلي، وهي نتاج متعمد لحرب انتقامية تدميرية ضد القطاع وأبنائه وبنيته التحتية ومنظومته الطبية، يتم فيها استخدام سلاح التجويع والحصار لجعل القطاع غير قابل للحياة وتهجير سكانه قسريا من أراضيهم دون أدنى اكتراث أو احترام للمواثيق الدولية أو المعايير الإنسانية الأخلاقية. السادة الحضور، لقد حذرت مصر مرارا من خطورة هذه الحرب وتبعاتها والتداعيات الجسيمة للعمليات العسكرية الإسرائيلية في مدينة رفح الفلسطينية التي أدى المضي قدما بها إلى إقامة وضع يعوق التدفقات الإغاثية التي كانت تدخل القطاع بشكل رئيسي من معبر رفح. ولذلك فإنني أطالب من هنا وبتضافر جهود وإرادة المجتمعين اليوم باتخاذ خطوات فورية وفعالة وملموسة لإنفاذ ما يلي. أولاً، استرحب مصر بقرار مجلس الأمن رقم 2735 الصادر بالأمس 10 يونيو 2024 وبالقرارات الأخرى ذات الصلة، وتطالب بتنفيذهم الكامل، فإنها تشدد على الوقف الفوري والشامل والمستدام لإطلاق النار في قطاع غزة، وإطلاق سراح كافة الرهائن والمحتجزين على نحو فوري، والاحترام الكامل لما فرضه القانون الدولي والقانون الدولي الإنساني من ضرورة حماية المدنيين وعدم استهداف البنية التحتية أو موظفي الأمم المتحدة أو العاملين في القطاعات الطبية والخدمية في القطاع. ثانياً، إلزام إسرائيل بإنهاء حالة الحصار والتوقف عن استخدام سلاح التجويع في عقاب أبناء القطاع، وإلزامها بإزالة كافة العراقيل أمام النفاذ الفوري والمستدام والكافي للمساعدات الإنسانية والإغاثية إلى قطاع غزة من كافة المعابر، وتأمين الظروف اللازمة لتسليم وتوزيع هذه المساعدات إلى أبناء القطاع في مختلف مناطقه، والانسحاب من مدينة رفح. ثالثاً، توفير الدعم والتمويل اللازمين لوكالة الأونروا حتى تتمكن من الاطلاع بدورها الحيوي والمهم في مساعدة المدنيين الفلسطينيين، والعمل على تنفيذ قرارات مجلس الأمن المعنية بالشأن الإنساني بما فيها القرار رقم 2720 وتشريع تدشين الآليات الأممية اللازمة لتسهيل دخول وتوزيع المساعدات في القطاع. رابعاً، توفير الظروف اللازمة للعودة الفورية للنازحين الفلسطينيين في القطاع إلى مناطق سكنهم التي أجبروا على النزوح منها بسبب الحرب الإسرائيلية. السادة الحضور، إن الحلول العسكرية والأمنية لن تحمل إلى منطقتنا إلا المزيد من الاضطراب والدماء، فالسبيل الوحيد لإحلال السلام والاستقرار والتعايش في المنطقة يكمن في علاج جذور الصراع من خلال حل الدولتين ومنح الشعب الفلسطيني حقه المشروع في دولته المستقلة القابلة للحياة على خطوط 4 يونيو عام 1967 وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية، والتي تحظى بالعضوية الكاملة في الأمم المتحدة. وأود أن أسمن في هذا الصدد اعترافات دول وحكومات أسبانيا وأيرلندا والنرويج وسلوفينيا بالدولة الفلسطينية، وأدعو باقي دول العالم إلى أن يحذوا ذات الحذو وأن يقفوا في الجانب الصحيح من التاريخ، جانب العدل والسلام والأمن والأمل. أشكركم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Shukran, Fakhamat al-Rais. I now give the floor to His Excellency, United Nations Secretary General, Mr. António Guterres.
Your Majesty, King Abdallah, Your Excellency, President al-SIsi, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming together for this urgent call to action for life-saving relief to the people of Gaza that are under fire in the most dramatic circumstances. It's now 8 months since the horrific Hamas terror attacks on 7 October and the abduction of Israeli men, women and children to Gaza. But 8 months of relentless suffering for Palestinian civilians in Gaza. The speed and scale of the carnage and killing in Gaza is beyond anything in my ears as Secretary General. At least 1.7 million people, 75% of Gaza's population, have been displaced many times over by Israel military attacks. Nowhere is safe. Conditions are deplorable. The public health situation is beyond crisis level. Gaza's hospitals lie in ruins. Medical supplies and fuel are scarce or non-existent. More than 1 million Palestinians in Gaza do not have enough clean drinking water and face desperate levels of hunger. Over 50,000 children require treatment for acute malnutrition. And despite the ocean of needs, at least half of all humanitarian aid missions are denied access, impeded or cancelled due to operational or security reasons. On top of all these, since the attack on the Rafah border crossing 1 month ago, the flow of critical humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza, which was already woefully inadequate, has plummeted by 2/3. Excellencies, in the face of this calamity, the world has tried its best to save lives. And I want to express my gratitude to Egypt and Jordan for all their efforts. Your Majesty, through you, allow me to thank the people of Jordan for the relief provided, including through aid convoys, airdrops and field hospitals. We all appreciate immensely your personal commitment to mobilize the international community and your persistent call for a robust coordination mechanism for the unimpeded and safe flow of sufficient aid to the people of Gaza. I urge the international community to support Jordan's efforts as it undertakes its critical role assisting the people of Gaza and serving as a key regional humanitarian hub. President al-SIsi, I also want to commend your critical leadership and that of the government and people of Egypt, not only in supporting humanitarian relief to the people of Gaza in so many ways, but also for your pivotal role in seeking an end to this tragic conflict and building a foundation for sustainable peace. And of course, we all salute the brave humanitarians in Gaza working in nightmare conditions to stem the suffering. Our Palestinian humanitarian colleagues in particular are working against enormous obstacles and near impossible conditions. Imagine their lives and circumstances, showing up for work when their homes are destroyed and their loved ones killed, putting themselves in humanitarian convoys even when they have been fired upon. Without those courageous individuals, the aid operations in Gaza would collapse, and UNRWA is the backbone of this humanitarian response, and it has suffered intolerably alongside the people it supports. I express my deepest condolences to the families and friends of the 193 UNRWA staff members who have been killed. There must be full accountability for each and every one of these deaths. Attacks on UN personnel and premises are unacceptable. Excellencies, the horror must stop. It's high time for a ceasefire along with the unconditional release of hostages. I welcome the peace initiative recently outlined by President Biden and urge all parties to seize this opportunity and come to an agreement. And I call on all parties to respect their obligations under international humanitarian law. This includes facilitating the delivery of humanitarian aid both into and inside Gaza, as they have committed. All available routes into Gaza must be operational, and the land routes are absolutely crucial. I also welcome all coordinated efforts to fully operationalize the mechanism to facilitate aid into Gaza, as mandated by Security Council resolution. The rollout of the mechanism remains critical. I commend governments and people across the region and the world for supporting it. The security of UNRWA and our humanitarian partners is vital to moving life-saving aid over the border and where it needs to go within Gaza. Deliverers require safe routes and effective deconfliction mechanisms to ensure their security. They require unimpeded access for security and communications equipment, commensurate with the risks of working in a war zone. They require immediate efforts to clear routes inside Gaza, which are littered with mines and unexploded ordnance. Civilians must be allowed to seek safety, and civilians and the infrastructure they rely on must never be militarized or targeted. Excellencies, I also call for the world to stand united to safeguard UNRWA in the face of outrageous and relentless attacks. UNRWA's role will remain critical not only during the conflict, but afterwards. Over 1 million deeply traumatized children in Gaza need psychosocial support and the safety and hope that schools used to provide. Around 60% of all residential buildings and at least 80% of commercial facilities have been damaged by Israeli bombardment. Health facilities and educational institutions are in rubble. Only UNRWA has the capacity, skills and networks needed to support the Palestinian people to face the immense challenge on health, on education, and so much more. Excellencies, ultimately the solution to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is political. The only way forward is through a political solution that opens a path to sustained peace based on two states, Palestine and Israel, living side by side in peace and security on the basis of the pre-97 lines and the relevant United Nations resolutions, previous agreements and international law, with Jerusalem as capital of both states. Let us keep working to make that a reality as we work to answer today's call to action for Palestinians in Gaza in such profound and immediate need, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. الكلمة الآن لسيادة الأخ محمود عباس رئيس دولة فلسطين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أتوجه بداية بالشكر لصاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني وفخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي ومعالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة أنطونيو غوتيريس على الدعوة لهذا المؤتمر الهام لتقديم المساعدات الإنسانية العاجلة للشعب الفلسطيني المنكوب والمدمر على أيدي قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي الغاشمة في قطاع غزة وفي الضفة الغربية. كما وأشكر جميع القادة وممثلي الوفود والدول والمنظمات المشاركة على تلبيتها نداء الاستغاثة هذا لتقديم ما يمكن من مساعدات إنسانية علها تبلسم جراح وآلام شعبنا المعذب في مخيمات النزوح وتمده بوسائل الإيواء والمياه والكهرباء والخدمات الطبية تمهيداً لعودته لمناطقه التي أجبر
returning to the places where they were asked to forcibly displace, and the return for our children, for universities and schools after being rehabilitated. Yes, my dear colleagues, isn't it time yet to stop what our people have been facing since Gaza Strip, since 8 months, since genocide, starvation, and deprivation from the minimum human rights? So this is apart from what our country is facing in Gaza from the occupation, terrorism, and the deprivation of their resources and lands, assaulting their dignity and sacred places. So over the 2 days, the 26th and 27th of last month in Brussels, the Palestinian state have presented their programs for relief and to return the main services and for the institutional reform, financial and economic stability. And it has announced its readiness to assume its responsibilities in Gaza Strip, as it is the case in the Gaza, the West Bank, in addition to all of Gaza crossings, and their full readiness to coordinate with countries and international organizations of relevance. And we call in this state our dear friends that are participating in this meeting to support the humanitarian relief that is presented through this conference. And the UN security and all of the international community is high to pressure Israel to open all of the land crossings to Gaza Strip and to hand it over to the new government, to enter all of the relief aid and all of the sheltering and also working on services. And prior to that, we should continue to exert all of the efforts for the ceasefire immediately and constantly, and the withdrawal of all of the Israeli occupation from Gaza Strip, to open all of the field, to have the state of Palestine assuming its full responsibility and authority, in addition to releasing the confiscated Palestinian funds by Israel. And we reiterate our confirmation that the political solution based on legitimate and the Arab initiative requires that Palestine gets its full membership in the United Nations, and recognizing most of the countries with it, with extended thanks for the countries that have already done that, to pave the way to implement the two-state solution by ending the Israeli occupation from Palestine with its capital, the Eastern Jerusalem, on the 1967 and in accordance to the Security Resolution 194 to achieve the security in the world and the peace and security in the world. We reiterate our thanks for the head of the state, and we thank His Majesty the King and the people of Jordan for hosting this conference and the efforts that they exert to support the Palestinian people. Extend the thanks also for His Excellency al-SIsi for their efforts that they exert for all of what is related to the Palestinian people. We reiterate our thanks for the presidents and the heads of the delegations for their participation and their assistance and their stances, and for you, Your Excellencies, Your Majesty, and all of the extended thanks for this important conference. Peace be upon all of you.
شكرا سيادة الرئيس.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
His Excellency UN Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mr. Martin Griffiths.
There you go. Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity to speak. Thank you, Your Majesty, Mr. President, Honorable Secretary General, Excellencies, and friends of the people of Palestine. I want to add my thanks to Jordan, Egypt, and the Secretary General for convening us here today in response to the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and my appreciation to you all for your participation. As I have said, as we have all said many times in the past 9 months, what we witnessed since October the 7th last year is a stain on our humanity. I can only therefore echo the call to action so powerfully expressed by His Majesty King Abdallah, by His Excellency President al-SIsi, and of course the Secretary General in their opening remarks. I can only reiterate the crucial importance of acting swiftly and decisively to pull Gaza and its people back from the abyss that they know so well. This morning, we met in 3 separate working groups to discuss and identify concrete priority tasks for this urgent action. And it is my privilege today to convey the outcomes of those working groups to this high-level segment. During these productive discussions, we heard from our co-hosts, Jordan and Egypt, UN agencies, NGOs, Red Cross, Red Crescent, movement partners, as well as donors and member states. The first working group considered the humanitarian needs and the requirements for getting humanitarian assistance into Gaza at scale and with the predictability required. The mechanism mandated by the UN Security Council and mentioned by the Secretary General in Resolution 2720 for channeling aid to Gaza needs additional support to be fully operational inside Gaza, and I pay tribute to my colleague Sigrid Krach, the Special Coordinator, the Senior Humanitarian Coordinator, for her efforts. All crossings, as the working group pronounced, must be open and functioning in full capacity. Entry requirements for humanitarian supplies and personnel must be streamlined. Safe, conducive, and enabling conditions for humanitarian aid workers have to be ensured for the effective reception and provision of aid to civilians in need throughout Gaza, and the UN flash appeal for Gaza must be fully funded. According to the United Nations and partners, $2.5 billion are estimated to be needed to provide aid for the people of Gaza from April until December 2024. This roughly provides for $930 million for food and nutrition, $400 million for health and medicine, $700 million for shelter and sanitation. And I should add that today we heard from Jordan an extrapolation of $300 million per month for essential commodities for the people in Gaza, a figure that was echoed by Egypt, and Jordan and Egypt both proposed additional estimations of $500 million for an optimal capacity for the flow of aid from these generous countries to benefit the people of Gaza. The second working group recognized the need for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, hardly a new call, and discussed means to overcome the significant challenges to the protection of civilians and the access, delivery, and distribution of humanitarian assistance to, within, and throughout Gaza, and the lack of supplies, equipment, rampant insecurity, and the utter devastation, including damage to roads and other essential infrastructure, was also well noted, and there was, of course, consensus on this devastation. There was a unanimous horror at the vast toll of death, injury, destruction, displacement, serial displacement, trauma and deprivation suffered by the people of Gaza in just 9 months, as well as the horrendous toll on humanitarian and including United Nations workers, of course from UNRWA in particular, which exceeded the death toll across the whole world in the past 12 years combined. What is clear to us is that while we will, as humanitarians, continue to find concrete solutions to the challenges to aid delivery, we need a fundamental shift in our operating environment, which needs to ensure safe, conducive, and enabling conditions for humanitarian aid workers, and we need our operations to go from being obstructed to being facilitated. So, of course, we call on the parties to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law. We reaffirm the essential role of UNRWA, whose staff and premises have been and continue to be and will be the backbone of the humanitarian operation. This working group stressed the need for these immediate measures to facilitate the delivery of aid. Number one, a functioning mechanism for operational coordination and notification. Number two, full access for basic equipment for safety and security of humanitarian staff. Number three, passable roads, clearance of explosive ordnance. Number four, unimpeded passage to distribute aid and access communities across Gaza. And finally, sufficient and predictable flows of fuel and prioritized aid, if you wouldn't mind. The third working group, the last, looked at the opportunities for supporting early recovery priorities in Gaza, recognizing the immense scale of destruction in Gaza, homes, schools, places of worship, water systems, etc. All participants in that working group agreed that planning for early recovery, even at this stage, surreal as this may seem, was vital to restoring dignity, rights, and hope among a traumatized population that has lost almost everything. Participants commended the initial recovery planning underway by the United Nations country team, including UNRWA, as well as the World Bank, the Palestinian Authority, and other partners, and pledged to support their initiatives. The participants once again reaffirmed the vital role UNRWA plays in the early recovery phase, especially in education, health, and psychosocial support. They stressed the critical importance in the early recovery phase of the removal of unexploded ordnance and the tons of rubble and debris, and we have seen recently statements by the United Nations about the extraordinary destruction of structures across Gaza. Provision of shelter, rehousing solutions, rehabilitation of food production, livelihood opportunities, support to the private sector, all of this must be included in plans for the reconstruction of Gaza that should start as soon as is humanly possible. Let us be clear, however, that with all this and none of this new, the only way to fully and effectively address the humanitarian needs in Gaza is, very simply, an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Your Majesty, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Our collective humanity is still at work. Acting on the outcomes of this conference, it is our solemn task, I suggest, to harness some of that humanity, meet our responsibilities, and bring finally an end to the travesty that has brought such misery to the people of Gaza. I ask your support in all the follow-up actions that have been identified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to President of the Republic of Cyprus, His Excellency, Mr. Nikos Christodoulis.
Your Majesty, President Sisi, Secretary General, Excellencies, at the outset, I would like to thank His Majesty King Abdallah for hosting us a few days after Jordanians mark the 25th anniversary of your accession to the throne, and I congratulate Your Majesty for your Silver Jubilee. I also wish to express my deep appreciation to King Abdallah, but also to President Sisi and the UN Secretary General for convening us here today. This summit and your call for action are significant and timely, not just for Gaza, but for our region and beyond. Dear friends, Jordan and Egypt are pillars of peace and stability in this region. A continuation and an escalation of the crisis in Gaza will impact them directly and will also have extensive and unpredictable regional reverberations. So when they call on us to mobilize further support, enhance donor coordination and efficiency, we need to heed their call. Cyprus is present today at this summit as a country in the region and of the region, as a European Union member state closer to the region, but also as a neighbor and part of the region. My country had a distinct responsibility and a moral duty to act in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This is why we have established a maritime route for delivering humanitarian assistance to the ones in need in Gaza. The maritime corridor is the realization of a moral obligation, but also the expression of our wish to be present, to be active, and to help in any way that we can in reducing the suffering of people. The maritime route complements existing humanitarian routes, primarily Egypt's Rafah crossing point, as well as Jordan's invaluable efforts through land and air. Through the Cyprus Maritime Corridor, additional volumes of much-needed humanitarian assistance has been delivered to Gaza. Our goal is for this flow of assistance to continue and further increase. And to this end, I want to express my gratitude to the efforts of the many stakeholders in the region and beyond. I want to particularly note the contribution of the United States, the European Union, as well as the United Arab Emirates' important and persistent support. The backing of all of our partners has been vital for this route to open and effectively operate. I also want to take the opportunity to personally thank the UN Senior Coordinator, Sigrid Kaag. Her support and assistance implementing UN Security Council Resolution 2720 by rolling out the UN digital database in Cyprus has helped this maritime route in facilitating, monitoring, and verifying the flow of aid from Cyprus and from the US pier into Gaza. I invite all stakeholders to support the important work of Ms. Kaag. Dear friends, I echo King Abdallah, President Sisi, and Secretary General Guterres' call for action. It is imperative on all of us to do our collective utmost. No matter how big or small our domestic economies are, how near or far we are from Gaza, we all need to take that extra step. Send more humanitarian and financial assistance, support UN Senior Coordinator Kaag's mandate, support the UN humanitarian agencies on the ground. In closing, I would like to stress that the only way for a sustainable solution is the revival of the two-state solution in line with the UN resolutions. As I stated during the Cairo summit last October, we have no other option but to create the conditions for the resumption of a meaningful peace process. Thank you very much.
أشكر فخامة الرئيس نيكوس رئيس جمهورية قبرص على كلمته، وأعطي الكلمة الآن لفخامة الرئيس بول كاغامي رئيس جمهورية رواندا، فليتفضل.
Your Majesty, King Abdallah II of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Excellency Abdel Fattah al-SIsi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Excellency António Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished heads of delegation, heads of international organizations, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me first to commend His Majesty King Abdallah, along with President Sisi and Secretary General Guterres, for convening this conference and associating us with such a noble cause. Evidently, the problem at hand is a very complex one. However, that does not mean it is insurmountable. A crisis like this seems to shrink the world. As we gather here, including those of us from other regions, we are all compelled to join forces with a sense of heightened urgency to find a lasting solution. The powers, means, and capacity represented in this room today cannot fail to prompt immediate action to bring an end to the terrible suffering of countless innocent civilians as we are seeing every day. It moves us deeply, and we are here to offer our modest contribution to the tireless diplomatic and mediation initiatives of various countries and organizations to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. These efforts that have been ongoing must be acknowledged and supported so that we see tangible results as quickly as possible to ensure the protection of children and their families and the alleviation of their devastating circumstances. Facilities such as schools and hospitals or places of refuge where people congregate should neither be used by combatants nor targeted by military operations. The erosion of basic principles against the targeting of civilians under any circumstances is a cause for alarm, because we are not just talking about legal obstructions, but actual human lives. Humanitarian action addresses the immediate needs of people trapped in the horrors of conflict. Ultimately, however, the end we all seek is progress towards a durable security framework and a long-term political solution. Rwanda remains ready to play its part to support this process, determined in our belief that it is possible to see an end to this crisis soon. Once again, I wish to thank the conveners of this conference for taking the lead to ensure that the humanitarian mission in Gaza can be fulfilled. I thank you for for your kind attention.
أشكر فخامة الرئيس بول كوجامي وأعطي الكلمة الآن لفخامة الرئيس فيليبي نيوس رئيس جمهورية موزمبيق فليتفضل.
I will do it in Portuguese.
Your Majesty, Abdallah II, King of Jordan, the humanity admires your courage and your determination. Your Excellency Abdel Fattah al-SIsi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Egypt personalizes the humanism of our continent, the African continent. Your Excellency António Guterres, United Nations Secretary General. Your Excellencies, distinguished comrades and friends from Palestine, distinguished delegates, on behalf of the Mozambican government, we would like to congratulate Your Excellencies for the initiative to convene the conference on call for Africa urgent humanitarian response for Gaza, and we are grateful for the invitation extended to us to attend it. We are honored to convey the message of friendship and solidarity of the Mozambican people to the people of Palestine, particularly the people of Gaza that has experienced an unprecedented humanitarian tragedy. Military hostilities in the Gaza Strip have caused the death of thousands of innocent people, including children and women, and the devastation of socio-economic infrastructure. It would be of a high moral value to avoid hindrances in the provision of humanitarian assistance to the people in need. This conflict is reaching catastrophic proportions when, in the face of reiterated calls from the international community for its cessation, attacks on civilian and humanitarian staff persist in violation of standards of the international humanitarian law and of the human rights of the Palestinian people. Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, along our history as a country, we have had our share of painful experiences of wars and armed conflicts. It is on the basis of those rules of the law of armed conflicts that Mozambique is firmly opposed to a forced displacement of the Palestinian civilian population. The antidote used for the settlement in Mozambique was a dialogue, which we regret having come too late when many lives had already been lost. Therefore, the Republic of Mozambique joins the Call for Action initiative, which calls for the end of the Israeli military operations in Gaza and Rafah, which violate all humanitarian moral standards in the time of war. We underscore in this regard the binding nature of various United Nations Security Council resolutions where we are non-permanent members, and we call in particular for the immediate implementation of obligation of Resolution 2728 to 2730 of May 2024 on the protection of humanitarian and United Nations personnel, their installation and assets, which we have presided. Your Majesty, Mozambique supports the conclusion submitted by the working groups on the pertinent need and urgency to provide humanitarian assistance and protection of civilians commensurate to the needs of the Palestinian people without any preconditions of a political nature. I conclude our statement by reiterating our invitation to Israel to put an end to atrocities and all hostilities perpetrated against innocent people. And Mozambique stands ready to render its contribution to ensure the resolution of this protracted conflict through dialogue between the parties. We believe that the recognition of the two-state principle in an environment of peace, coexistence, and mutual respect may bring about the regional stability that we so dearly desire. Thank you very much for your attention.
أشكر فخامة رئيس جمهورية موزمبيق وأعطي الكلمة الآن لفخامة رئيس المنتخب لجمهورية إندونيسيا برابو سوبيانو فليتفضل.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Your Majesty, King Abdallah II of Jordan, Your Excellency, President Abdel Fattah, al-SIsi of Egypt, Your Excellency António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency President Mahmoud Abbas of the State of Palestine. On behalf of the government of Indonesia, I would like to thank Jordan, Egypt, and the United Nations for convening and hosting this crucial meeting. The government of Indonesia and the people of Indonesia express once again the strongest support for an independent and sovereign Palestine as the real solution to this conflict in Palestine and in Gaza. We look with the world today with horror, dismay, and astonishment at the fact that nations that consider themselves modern and civilized can perpetrate flagrant violations of international humanitarian law. The targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure is in direct violation of the laws of modern warfare. We call on both sides to respect the laws of warfare. We call on all great powers to use their great influence to enforce the Convention of International Law. We call on the findings of the International Court of Justice to be enforced. The humanitarian catastrophe unfolding before our eyes must be addressed immediately. Indonesia was one of the first to support the proposals recently announced by the President of the United States, Mr. Biden. This calls for an immediate ceasefire and subsequent phases leading to a real and lasting solution to the Palestine issue. Indonesia is ready to contribute to all efforts that can lead to this ceasefire, this immediate ceasefire, and to take part in all the phases following such an immediate ceasefire. We will significantly increase our contributions to UNRWA and other immediate humanitarian assistance. We are ready to deploy more medical teams and a field hospital to operate in Gaza. We are also ready to once again deploy a hospital ship and also to deploy air assets to take part in airdrops when necessary. We are also willing to evacuate 1,000 patients to be treated in Indonesian hospitals and to be returned to Gaza once they recover and the situation in Gaza becomes normal. We are also willing to evacuate children and orphans to be given post-trauma treatment and schooling and to be returned back to Gaza when the situation becomes normal. Ladies and gentlemen, although we are willing to support and contribute to all these efforts, the final solution to this problem is a two-state solution. Only with a two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel living side by side in security and safety, can we resolve this problem. Thank you very much.
أشكر فخامة الرئيس برابو سبيانو وأعطي الكلمة.
Your Excellency, thank you. And I give the floor right now to His Excellency, the representative of Spain. The floor is yours.
Al-SIsi, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, dear colleagues, thank you very much, Your Majesty, for convening this meeting at such a crucial moment. 8 months after the beginning of the conflict, the situation is more critical than ever. I do not need to remind this room of the tragedy that keeps unfolding not far from where we stand. And I would like to start by welcoming the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2735 last night, supporting the United States proposal for a ceasefire. For months, we have called for an immediate ceasefire, the access of humanitarian assistance and the release of hostages. Now we call Hamas and Israel to act in a responsible manner and seize the new opportunity in front of us, which is the result of the endless and commendable efforts of the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. We must increase the pressure for a ceasefire to be agreed. Moreover, urgent action to deliver a humanitarian response for Gaza is needed. So let me outline 3 proposals on what we should do together. First, we must significantly increase humanitarian assistance and aid flows to Gaza, and we must make sure that it can enter the Strip and reach those in extreme need. In 2023, my country, Spain, tripled its support to Palestine. It amounted to over 50 million euros, including humanitarian and development funding, and our commitment to Palestine will continue and intensify through 2024. I'm pleased to announce that Spain will mobilize this year an additional package of 16 million euros in support for Palestine. We will also support the mechanisms established by the UN Security Council Resolution 2720 to increase humanitarian aid to Gaza. And in this context, I would like to reiterate Spain's firm support to the United Nations. Especially, we need to maintain or even increase our support to UNRWA, which must be fully operational in Gaza. Its work is more essential now than ever, even before. Second, we have to defend compliance with international law. Gaza's humanitarian catastrophe is seriously undermining international law, international humanitarian law, the multilateral system, and the rules-based international order. The parties must comply with the provisional measures issued by the International Court of Justice, which call for a halt of the military offensive over Rafah and ask for unhindered provision of humanitarian aid. These provisions are legally binding for every member of the international community. However, it is evident that they are not being respected. And in this context, Spain has decided to take part in the proceedings initiated by South Africa in the International Court of Justice. International law must prevail. Third, development aid should also support the Palestine Authority. Humanitarian action, early recovery, and reconstruction of Gaza are different phases of a process that we enhance here today, and that must ultimately contribute to a Palestine state and the implementation of the two-state solution. Excellencies, as you know, my country, Spain, along with others, Ireland, Norway, Slovenia, recognized the state of Palestine over the past 2 weeks. It is not a symbolic gesture, and it is certainly not against Israel. A Palestine state is the best security guarantee for Israel and for the region. Exactly 2 weeks ago, I stood in front of Spanish citizens to explain that peace, justice, and coherence are the basis of our historic decision. Today, I stand in front of you convinced that our peoples expect from us that we all, collectively, advance towards concrete results and actions to stop the suffering in Gaza and build a better future of peace in the Middle East. Thank you.
أشكر دولة
I thank His Excellency Pedro Sanchez, and I give the floor right now to my colleague, the Prime Minister of Iraq, our Tariq Mohammed al-Shia al-Sudani. The floor is yours. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Your Majesty Abdullah II, King of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-SIsi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, His Excellency António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, representatives, Your Majesties, Excellencies, and Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon all of you. We extend our thanks and gratulation for the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan for hosting us for this important conference at this critical time. Extended thanks for Egypt and to the United Nations for their participations in this urgent humanitarian response for Gaza. And we meet today to identify the methods for responding to the international humanitarian crisis that is expanding because of the aggression on Gaza. And I will not go into the details of the suffering or the assistance that Iraq have sent or that we are ready to send, because it is the least that we can do. But we reiterate the initiative that we have launched in the Peace Conference 2023 in Cairo to establish a fund to support Gaza after the aggression, and to set an assessment that identifies the needs and to give the commitments between us in a methodological way. This aggression on Gaza have exposed their lack of responsibility in the genocide that is taking place and the breaches for all of the laws, and with these violations of human rights by the occupants, because the numbers of the victims are massive and they are martyrs in front of God. And with all of these factors that we could not mention, well, we see that the world is hiding behind shameful and shy positions that are not really responsible. The barbarianity of this aggression have aggravated the economy and devastated the economy that was already suffering from economic problems as a result of the violations of the occupations. And the number of the IDPs of Gaza is more than 80% of the number of the inhabitants in Gaza. That is about 2,003,000 people, and 500,000 workers have left their work because of the war. And today, this aggression have devastated 370,000 houses, and more than 35% of the water and the irrigation and the water and the sewage systems and the electricity were devastated. And the electricity have stopped since November 2023, and it is in need of 400,000 of fuel a day. As the infrastructure was devastated in education, the laboratory, and many schools and universities were demolished, and the numbers who have lost their studying, and 82% of schools are out of service, and about 625,000 have been deprived from education in all of the sectors, and more than 5,500 students, 50,000 students have martyred, and 95 university professors martyred, and more than 8,000 have been injured among the students and also teachers. And the health sector was also suffering from the attacks, and the world have followed lively the shelling of schools and the massacres that have been taken against the health workers and patients. Out of 35 hospitals in Gaza, 32 of which are out of service, as mostly are partially or fully destroyed. And to confirm of the brutality of this aggression, and we work on this sector, and because of the aggression, more than 890 sites were demolished, and 13 libraries were demolished, and 227 mosques and 3 churches were destroyed. This was listed based on the aggression that is happening and the violation of human rights, and for fulfilling the war crimes and genocide and crimes against humanity that were practiced through famine and displacements against the Palestinian people, and it have aggravated its misery because of the lack of food and security and loss of fuel and water, and the occupation have closed all of the borders and did not allow the entrance of aid. Many countries have communicated with us to collaborate all of the efforts to stop this aggression and to stop its expansion, but these countries are working with us to try to mitigate this aggression against the Palestinian people, and Iraq thinks that we need to work actively on this side. I believe that the only method in front of us all is to work on the ceasefire first, to stop the expansion of the struggle and to end the crimes that are being exerted against the people of Gaza, and then working fully to try to restore the Palestinian people and restoring all of their human rights and legal rights to have their independent land and with the capital Jerusalem. And if we want to be true in stopping this aggression, we have to tackle this aggression against the people and to support the presence of the Palestinian state, and to try to support all of the countries to complete that. And we salute Spain, Norway, Slovenia, and also the United Nations and UNRWA. We salute them to try to mitigate this misery of people. And finally, perhaps the responses in the popular world, the Islamic and the Arab world, are not up to date for what is happening. However, we have a point of view that is different, because this will aggravate to the new extremism that will affect our security in our countries and will destabilize the stability and peace in the region. The size of these crimes and genocide that have taken place against humanity have made us lose our faith in the humanitarian rights, and this was supposed to be based on the systems that is just, and this will have a massive value that will be shouldered by countries that see that they have established the system, but it is not working right now. It struck us the way of handling the international and criminal court, and how could these countries.
And in this part, we request of all the states to respect the UN resolutions and also the resolutions of the Lahey Court. At the end here, we are seeking for the positive results of this summit and this conference in regard of providing the people of Gaza with the humanitarian needs that they deserve. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. شكرا صاحب الفخامة. الآن أعطي المايك لرئيس وزراء سلوفينيا الدكتور روبرت غولوب. صاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله صاحب الفخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي الأمين العام غوتيريس أصحاب الفخامة والسعادة فنحن نرى الآن أمام عيوننا المعاناة أمام ما
And I would like to express our sincere respect and gratitude for our hosts to gather us here, but also our sincere gratitude and respect to the Kingdom of Jordan, to the State of Egypt, and all the UN agencies for their support and aid that are providing on the ground to the suffering people of Palestine and Gaza. I would also like to express our support to what has been already said by Prime Minister Sanchez. I will not try to reiterate his points. However, I'm pretty sure that to all of you and to all of us, there is one question that is always on our mind. How can each of us, individually or collectively, do more? How can we contribute in order to alleviate the suffering? How we can contribute to bring to peace? Slovenia is not the largest or the richest country in the world, but that is no excuse for us not to act, and not to act decisively. And we did. Slovenia is also a member of European Union and also a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council. And we used both of the platforms to raise our voice in the name of the Palestinian nation, to raise our voice when it comes to political support, either in supporting all of the resolutions of the United Nations, calling for ceasefire, calling for peace. We also raised our voice in the European Council, calling to all the member states of Europe to show solidarity with Palestinian nation. Not all of the calls have been heeded yet, but that will not prevent us or stop us to call more, even more decisively in the future. But that is not all. Slovenia has also joined and participated in the Jordan efforts in bringing humanitarian aid to Palestinian people in Gaza. Slovenia, when it was at worst, supported UNRWA. When the allegations of Israel against UNRWA were at its highest, we increased our financial support to UNRWA to demonstrate our complete trust by tenfold. That's how we showed our trust in UNRWA. It was not just talking. We put the money on the table as well. And we will continue to do so, to support UNRWA in every and each manner that we can. But we also firmly believe that the peace solution can only come through two-state solution. And for that reason, just last Tuesday, our parliament, our state, recognized the sovereign independent state of Palestine. Because there is no way forward but a way towards sustainable peace. And if today we can contribute a small step in that direction, it is a step worth taking. And for that, I express my gratitude to all of you for being here and to making that step. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the caretaker Prime Minister of the Lebanese Republic, His Excellency Mr. Najib Mikati.
جلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني فخامة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي.
Your Excellency António Guterres, Your Majesties, Excellencies, we attend today to the support of Gaza. I come here today from a country that suffer from the repercussions of this war on their land, and so the results of the devastation that Israel is following is unprecedented in the world, and we suffer it on our southern territories that have lots of martyrs and engineers, and it's a land that is burned by the criminality and the devastation to continue what is happening in Gaza. And from this podium, we call the countries of the world to enter and to stop what is happening after 75 years of ignoring the rights of Palestinian people, hoping that the decision of the resolution 2735 that was issued yesterday, and this is the first step, even if it is humble, towards stability, to reach peace intended so that the Palestinians get their right in their independent country. And we could not do that without the reality of the first. Yes, Our Excellencies, Lebanon feels the bitterness and carry the issues of the world because Arabs are our families, and we have paid lots of people and the infrastructure devastation, and we are ready today to relieve the injured in Gaza, especially children in our hospitals, and to support them. And this is a part of our solidarity, in addition to prepare staff and rehabilitate them, for compensating for them for that, as Israel have killed many in the health sector. And we are ready to cooperate with the Palestinian Authority to achieve the administrative requirements to facilitate the entrance of the injured and their return quickly to their country. Our dear friends, you can imagine the harm that Lebanon have faced since the aggression in the past October. The massive damages for health sector, agriculture, livestock, and educational. Our South and its people are in a calamity that we cannot describe, and the constant aggression is killing and destructing methodologically to turn the southern of Lebanon to an arid land. And therefore, I present this to you so that you can be as you were before. Lebanon is your second country, and we are fully agreeing that you can extend our thanks and support to assist people in their support of the reconstruction of Lebanon, because Lebanon will stay a country that is important for you. Thank you very much.
Head of the government of the Kingdom of Morocco, His Excellency Mr. Aziz Akhanouch.
صاحب الجلالة الملك عبد الله الثاني.
Your Excellency, Your Majesties, our dear friends, I'm delighted to convey my greetings from King Mohammed Al-Sadis. May God bless him, to his brother, His Majesty King Abdallah, the second king of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And I'm also delighted to convey my appreciation of His Majesty to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-SIsi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, and to His Excellency António Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. Well, what is happening in Gaza right now, it is not only numbers for the numbers of the civilians, casualties, and the destruction, or reports about the massiveness of the situation on the ground. What is happening in Gaza is a real tragedy that is unprecedented, and it is more than 1,300,000 people are living in difficult situations that no human person can have. And for the lack of humanitarian aid, living in this place is hell on earth, in the absence of security and food and medicine and water. Out of our responsibility, and as the King Mohammed Al-Sadis, as heading the Palestine Committee, he have asked urgent needs for our friends in Gaza and in Jerusalem, and to present educational scholarship for for the students that are studying in Moroccan universities and institutions. And Morocco is fully ready to continue presenting support for our Palestinian brothers, our dear friends and colleagues. The support for relief for people should not be only restricted to policies and conflict. King Mohammed VI, the head of Jerusalem Committee, have stressed the importance of moving forward urgently for the access of humanitarian aid and without any restrictions and from all of the borders, so that we can end this humanitarian tragedy. And from here, the kingdom stresses the empowerment of the United Nations and the organizations working in the humanitarian aspect, especially the UNRWA, to enable them to conduct their attributed tasks without any hindrance. And then this have proven that this is the pivotal source of life that supports the Palestinians. And also Morocco, headed by His Majesty King Mohammed Assadis, God bless him, condemned fully the forced displacement of civilians and without any justifications. Your Excellencies, your Majesties, Your Excellencies, Your Highnesses, the solutions, military solutions will not bring peace. Continuing forward in managing the conflict without any horizon, it will not get sustainable solutions. His Majesty have confirmed in more than one occasion the support of the Moroccan country to support the Palestinian people in having an independent country on the borders of July 1967 with the Eastern Jerusalem capital as based on the two-state solutions. And negotiation is the only way to achieve comprehensive and just peace, to avoid the repetition of such a tragedy. And in this context, the Moroccan country headed by King Mohammed VI, we support all of the suggestions that is aiming at a ceasefire permanently in Gaza and the admittance of the assistance and protecting civilians. And we call at handling positively to stop more bloodshed and to create solutions to the two-state solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the President of the European Council, His Excellency, Mr. Charles Michel.
Your Majesty, King Abdallah, dear President al-SIsi, dear Secretary General António Guterres, Excellencies. First of all, let me thank you for convening this important conference here in Jordan. A lot has happened since the Cairo Peace Summit last October, organized by President al-SIsi. And that's why today's conference is so vital. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU was born from the ashes of World War II, a horrific humanitarian disaster. Since then, we have built our union on the principles of human dignity, international cooperation, and international humanitarian law. Each civilian life matters, always and everywhere. And that's why, from day one, we have condemned Hamas' brutal attack against the people of Israel last October, and we also condemn the loss of each civilian life and the horrendous suffering and humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU has three key priorities: ending the war, more humanitarian assistance, and a political process. First, ending the war in Gaza and ensuring the protection of all civilians. Every day without a ceasefire is another day of blood and death. We call for an immediate ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the provision of humanitarian assistance. Since March, we have urged the Israeli government not to undertake a ground operation in Rafah. The orders of the International Court of Justice must be respected, and we strongly support the three-phase approach starting with a ceasefire and the release of hostages as endorsed by the UN Security Council yesterday. Second point, we must address the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza and the magnitude of the disaster. According to sources, over 37,000 Palestinians have been killed and nearly 85,000 injured. 75% of the population in Gaza is internally displaced with nowhere safe to go, and this war has also been a nightmare for the children of Gaza. 17,000 of them are separated from their families, many are orphans, many have had limbs amputated, often without proper medical condition. Each of these numbers represents a human life, and each is absolutely heartbreaking. And all this suffering is happening just a couple of 100 kilometers from here. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot and we do not forget the West Bank, and we call for an immediate halt to violence there and in East Jerusalem. I would like to thank key partners, especially Jordan and Egypt, for your leadership in providing humanitarian relief, as well as the United Nations. Since the outbreak of the crisis, the EU, together with our member states, we have provided nearly 800 million euros in humanitarian aid for Palestinians, and we have coordinated the delivery of over 2,500 tons of in-kind assistance, and I would like to commend the role played by our EU Commissioner, Janez Lenarčič, who is here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, UNRWA is not a terrorist organization, and we do not accept any attempt to label it as such. We will continue to support them together with our member states, and we also pay tribute to all aid workers who risk their lives to help others, and many have paid the ultimate price. Dear friends, our third priority is about the future, a more peaceful future. We have no choice but to look beyond today's darkness to an urgent settlement based on the two-state solutions. And there is one lesson learned. Security without peace is not security. Peace is the best and lasting security guarantee for both Israelis and Palestinians. We have consistently supported the two-state solution, and we support the Palestinian Authority and its reforms. This will bolster its legitimacy and credibility to deliver for its people, and that's why we do not accept that Israel withholds crucial clearance revenues, which undermines the Palestinian Authority. Dear friends, the EU has built a union founded on forgiveness, reconciliation, and human dignity. We believe in international humanitarian law and international justice. We will always be on the side of humanity, not on the side of hatred. And that's why we believe in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "It is not enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. It's not enough to believe in it. One must work at it." Humanity has no borders. It has no religion and no skin color. It's universal. Let's work together to build a safe and peaceful future for this region and its children. You can count on the EU. I thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is the end of the plenary session. Session is adjourned, and we will continue our deliberations after lunch. Thank you very much.